It's tabletop time.
I'm Jazza.
I'm Dave.
And we are painting a mini together today. How are you at sharing?
I'm pretty good at sharing.
I'm not. So this will be fun. I think we're both going to try some things we've never really dived into deeply before.
Oh boy, are we.
It'll be a good fun, be a bit of a good fun time. I'm especially excited because we have this lineup of incredible models to pick from that was spent from the sponsor, Emmy Creative, who are a spin-off of Terrible Kid Stuff, Incredible Miniatures. And we got our free pick, and I think we both were looking at the same
Yeah,
one.
I picked it up. It's not even a choice for me. I'm straight into it.
This one.
I don't know if this is relevant, but I used to play a lot of Timbersaw in a game called Dota 2.
Yeah,
and I think I immediately was like, it's Timbersaw.
Definitely Timbersaw vibes.
Yeah.
I love that. And I love
his teddy bear powered tummy.
Adorable little opening of these little characters. Incredible pieces. We'll get to the sponsor later, but huge thank you to them for sponsoring this video.
I built this massive model, which was really cool. I actually didn't expect this model to be as big as it is. I saw the promo image we had of it, and then when I put it together, I was really impressed by the scale.
Definitely a centerpiece.
Yeah, well, it's like as big as a Redemptor Dreadnought. It's massive. Very cool model. Put it together. It was easy. No issues.
So let's see how the base coating and dry brushing goes. So I got stuck into airbrushing a base coat of black. I could have done this with an aerosol can, but especially because there are so many nooks and crannies and details, to really reach inside all of those, it would have taken enough aerosol that I wouldn't be confident of not walking up some of those details. Were we wiser, maybe we would have pre-painted them, but I think realistically, a lot of us just like to build the mini and see what we're looking at before we jump into a painting plan. With a nice, clean, flat base coat of black down, it's time to get painting. As you can see, I started off with a large dry brush and base coated the whole thing in sort of a mix of paints. So I turned into a dark, not too saturated metallic. This just gave it a solid base that I could work on top of and build up a bit of a brassy effect. So I got these brand new schmexy dry brushes that I purchased from Artist Opus. They do really high quality brushes, and I've been very curious to see if a not cheap but specifically designed set of dry brushes for premium dry brushing is all that much better than just using a scrappy brush, which I think I and most people usually use when we do dry brushing. And one of the great things about approaching this with dry brushes instead of something like airbrushing is that while I can still get a smooth effect because I am using very soft bristle dry brushes, I keep some of that texture, which in this case is perfect. Those sort of polished metal lines that make it look like it's really metallic, you know? And moving up into a bit of a solid brassy color, I guess I'll call this my mid-tone layer. This is where it started to really bring out the model shape and details. It was really fun to see the model come to life as I just dry brushed over this thing. And keeping in mind that I am using these for the first time, and I have to say they are better than any dry brushing experience I've had. But the reality is every dry brushing experience I've had has been with cheap and scrappy brushes. Obviously it's my first time, but I have to say, as a first impression goes, this was really fun. And I think the effect is really solid. Now I can't paint the whole model dry brushing, even though it makes a huge difference and it's super satisfying. The reality is if it's a crutch you lean on too much, it becomes a bit of a cheap look. So I went around the whole model with that same color that I did a lot of those mid-tone and highlighty looking brass things in, and filled in the rivets and certain lines and areas of the mechanisms. And combining the look of the really effective and fast working dry brushing over the whole model with some really specifically painted and trimmed areas really creates a very, very sharp look. With all those trims done, I had one last layer of dry brushing to go. A sort of off-white, cream-esque, very light metallic paint as part of the Scales color set. I started off with a bit more of a broad dry brush using a medium to small dry brush, basically picking highlight areas and giving it that sheet metal shine, scrape texture metal effect thing. I need to pick a better word for that, but you get the idea. The metal texture on the broader plate areas, using that to lift some areas in the model and create a bit more contrast with the tone. And then switching to the smallest dry brush. The thing was really small, it worked pretty well, and with slightly thicker paint on it so I could create detail. This is sort of almost a mix between line highlighting and dry brushing, adding enough of an impact that it would make a difference, but not so much that it wasn't dry brushing. This enabled me to bring out the rivets and some of the edges, but still focus on getting that surface texture and detail. And I think you can agree that the outcome is really solid. I took my time with this more than I normally would with dry brushing because I was approaching this like painting a display miniature, something I could really be proud of. So I tried not to rush it, tried to really focus on tone and aesthetic. And I have to say, I think it's really working. And this is just the foundation.
All right, Jazza, that's enough. You've been hogging this model for too long. I'm the one that built it, and I'm the one that was wanting to paint it, and you've gone and painted half of it. So I'm gonna come in and do all the fun bits. So while Jazza has been hard at work painting the model, I thought I'd take the opportunity to talk to you about the sponsor of this video. This video has been sponsored by MV Creative. Now, MV Creative was born from the creators of Terrible Kid Stuff, which is a company that have been producing some very cool models for 28, 32mm wargaming, tabletop gaming, for quite a long time. Now, MV Creative have been continuing this trend by making some really cool models for your tabletop games. Apparently, in amongst making all these awesome things, they also make cool goblin hats. Found this one in the studio and couldn't resist popping it on for this segment. MV Creative currently have a Kickstarter live right now, and that Kickstarter is called Green Skull Castle. And Green Skull Castle is a continuation of their previous Kickstarter where they're adding a whole bunch of these spicy goblin characters into the mix as heroes and villains that expand their world of, well, wacky goblins. Now, as I record this right now, some of the stretch goals have already been unlocked, and I wanted to bring your attention to Ink. There he is. I love him. Look at this guy. It's the ugliest hero you've ever seen. It's fantastic. And there are so many more characters like that. We painted a model today that was from their previous Kickstarter, basically because it was the biggest one they sent us and we wanted to paint the coolest, awesome, biggest model, but all their models are super cool. I had the pleasure of building them. They are super easy to clean and assemble, and I don't know what the magic resin mix that they use is, but it was a delight to work with, and it feels really smooth and cool too. All of their models were super easy to put together, and that is probably because they have all been put together, sculpted, printed, and then resin cast by industry leaders. If you're interested in these extremely fun, cheeky goblin miniatures, check out their Kickstarter, Green Skull Castle, Heroes and Legends. And you can get any of their models from their previous Kickstarter, Green Skull Castle, as part of your add-ons to that Kickstarter. We love good, fun miniatures here, so thank you once again for sponsoring. And to our viewers, please go check out that Kickstarter, consider backing it today. And now I think it's time for me to go and weather up this model and really make it look great. Not that Jazza hasn't already, but I like making things dirty. So I had to dive in there and paint this gobbo. I incorporated some skin or flesh tones and blended them into greens, and then highlighted both areas up with the respective colors. I like using these fleshy elements in orcs and goblins. I've always felt that adding those little bits of pink or little bits of flesh, emulating the blood rushing through their skin, breaks up that just block of green and gives them a little bit more animal life. So I'm especially happy with the pink tip of his droopy nose and the way his lips came out at the end. This goblin engineer also is covered in lots of leathers. I decided to paint these using stippling techniques to build up the texture. I used two different brown tones, one ready for the flight helmet and the other for the gloves, and then a more neutral brown for his leather jacket. By stippling these and causing uneven highlights in the creases and areas of the gloves and shoulders that would see the most wear and tear, it really sells the texture that this is leather rather than cloth, and I'm quite happy with the effect. Finishing out the goblin, I had to paint some small lenses in his eyes and a few metallic components, which was just going back and using the same base metals that Jazza had used on the rest of the construct. I'd recently finished painting my Nurgle monstrosities, and I knew how effective streaking grime was at achieving a good look for horns. Now, I didn't want to just streaking grime this whole model. I thought that that would kind of wash it away and not really show off very much. But what I did want to do is try using streaking grime as the sole wash or weathering agent on these bones that protrude from the front of the construct. I've never been happy with the way that washes sit on bone. So that's what's drawing me to streaking grime for this. The way that you pull away the grime using the white spirits leaves this really uneven mottled look on the bone, which is kind of what bone looks like when it's left to weather on its own. With the final small areas painted, it was time to move on to the first of my weathering steps. Using weathering pigments and powders is one of the best ways to get a dry or dusty look on models, because the way that these weathering powders dry leaves a different finish to that of painting using acrylic paints. Now, weathering powders and pigments always look best when used with lots of different colors to add variance. Subtly close, but still different. So I grabbed 4 weathering powders, and then I also mixed some of them as well, applying these powders in concentrated bursts around the bottom sides of the model. I was building up to be making sort of rust where water might settle, but also perhaps subtly reflecting the ground from beneath. So that was the main focus of the brown powders. Coming up from from below on the lower areas of the model. The reflective metal surfaces, but also where water might drip and accumulate and then cause rust. The black weathering powders, I focused really heavily around the engine components, the pipes and exhausts up on the top part of the model, taking special attention of the vent exits. Now, to get an extremely caked on appearance, I actually mixed some of the airbrush thinner with weathering powders and almost pasted some of this soot on. This technique works, but is very heavy-handed, and I would only recommend it for areas where the grime buildup is extreme and you want a lot of control over that almost brushed on appearance, but a thick and concentrated amount of these weathering pigments. With the powders dusted on and then set using airbrush thinner, I was ready to move on to what I'll be calling wet weathering effects. Now, the wet weathering effects I chose to use on this model were all the Vallejo weathering effects called engine. That means we have things like diesel stain, we have oil stains, engine grime and buildup. There were 6 of them altogether in the collection that we have. 2 of them were more like a thick paste for adding that textured buildup, and 4 of them were quite a bit more like shiny petrol stains. Once again, these effects are best applied together. If you can get a collection of them and build up an effect using multiple colors and textures, it emulates real world materials nicely. So any area on the model that looked to be a hatch or a pressured riveted plate that may have water or liquid or oil seeping out of it, I used these technical effects start dripping down the sides. Used a fair mix of these, focusing first with the thicker grimy materials to build up residue and sediment around the actual source of the leak, and then using the liquid effects, especially the black, to create lines that drag down from the model, showing where this substance is leaked over time. And then use the diesel stains colors to sort of dab in a fair amount of texture and color and staining. On the chest plate, there is an area where a lot of that brown weathering pigment had settled, and once I applied, especially the black engine oils onto the top of this, it seeped into it in an extremely natural way. If anyone has seen a rusty metal plate of engine that also has like years of oil and petrol buildup, I think that the front of this model is starting to capture that look really well. And this is something I'd love to explore further. I've mentioned to Jazza that I think it would be really cool if I painted like a World War II tank or something, but I don't know. Let me know in the description if you'd like to see something like that. Heavily weathered war gear, maybe an Imperial Guard tank, who knows? I noticed that I had neglected the 2 little chompy robots down the bottom, so I used a sponge to sponge on some reds on the tips of those missiles. The rough effect of sponging these highlights really fits nicely with the weathered look of the model. I also painted the eye lenses of these robots, adding a small reflective orange to the bottom part of the lens because the landscape was sort of a dark orangey. So with some tufts applied to the base, some gloss varnish applied to the lenses, I got to look back and enjoy our model.
Let's get it. Whoa, clear out the room, I'm coming through, they wanna see what I'm about. Yeah, I got skills, do it for the thrill, I'm on a paper route. Extra, read about it, I'm today's trending topic. I put commas over bullshit, yeah, I put that on mamas. They tryna block all my blessings, they thought I lost a stepping. I bet on me and my team, ISO is what I'm repping. Put on for the whole city, yeah, I got them rocking with me. I bet on me and my team, ISO is what I'm repping.
So there it is. I really hope you enjoyed this model, and I hope you're inspired by the outcome. I know I certainly am, but it's time to share it with Jazza and see what he thinks.
Man, you can make such a big difference so quickly with just a few little tricks. It feels like cheating, but at the same time, like the outcome is too cool. And it really isn't. It's just like the combination of the right things for the right mini make for something really special.
Yeah, learning a whole bunch of new techniques isn't cheating. Pushing your way to achieve something with the same things you've known how to do your whole life is kind of how you get stuck in a rut. So there's easier ways to achieve things. There's some amazing products out there and really cool stuff to work with. So try it out. That's what we've been doing.
Yeah, look, the combination of the wet look with the grease and effects that you used and the super dry sooty look with the powders just makes for such a cool outcome and a really textured result. So thank you so much for watching. We hope you guys had a good time. I know I had a great time. This was my happy place. Cool model, trying new things. Thank you, of course, to our patrons who make all of our content possible to support our endeavors, and Emmett Creative and Terrible Kid Stuff for providing us with these models, sponsoring this video. Make sure to do all the YouTube things. What are they, Dave?
You got to subscribe.
You forgot again, didn't you? You forgot the YouTube things?
I was too busy looking at my model.
How much? You do YouTube so much, you forget the YouTube things. I think I remember the YouTube thing. I should. Subscribe was definitely one of them. I'm trying to grow a beard.
You're scratching it.
Keep breaking my mask because I'm like, I should
grow a
shave,
beard.
but I'm giving it a go. I'm trying it on.
He's moving into Bob Ross stage.
I go for it until I realise it's a fruitless endeavour and I'm not good at it. And then
It looks fine from what I can see, which is a mask.
Well, I've gotten the advantage. No one knows how bad I am at growing a beard because I can hide it.
Have fun editing something out of this. Oh my God.